So you guys got to remember, from the time of the Egyptians, there was no European influence. There was no takeover yet. So they were able to get this knowledge and flourish and build, one of the greatest civilizations. So as I said, we can go back and look at the pyramids and marvel at those and say who built them. But we cannot forget the fact that the dynasties that we know of, the bodies that we can find, the people who we know exist, built equally amazing things, amazing structures, amazing colossal statues, and so on and so forth, that we can also look at and say, wow, how did they do this? So again, we know that they understood that knowledge, and it was getting that knowledge back, and they almost had it. But you guys got to understand, during all this time, there was this veneration of the zodiac. There was this understanding of the zodiac and the planets and the stars and so on and so forth. And they used it throughout their civilization, and it was a staple of the ancient civilization that they keep from us. Every single civilization that we go back to ancient, we find a zodiac. That is not a coincidence. We find a zodiac. We find the same exact teachings. I talked about this to you guys before. We can look across the world. We're going to see the same teachings, the same ancient teachings from one civilization to another across the planet. So now let's go back, as I always do. Ancient Greek civilization, ancient Egyptian civilization. And understand that, the ancient Egyptians was in tune, of course. The ancient Egyptians understood, nature and what was going on. The problem was you had the ancient Greeks, you had the Europeans who could not understand the spirituality of the ancient Egyptians. So they were always trying to understand and rationalize spirituality, put it into, terms that's normal to them. They were trying to rationalize, spirituality and make it, make sense and make it fit into, their world instead of being spiritual. They were trying to be, they was trying to be materialistic instead of spiritual. If you understand, it's gonna make sense in a second. So you got to think about it. You have pack of wolves, pack of lions. I always use them as an analogy because it's the most unbelievable thing when you really pay attention. They can go and hunt and coordinate attacks without no verbal communication. This is amazing when you see it. They actually coordinate and they strategize attacks on large animals. And they are successful a lot of the times because they strategize correctly. When they go and hunt buffalo, there's a plan of attack. For the wolves, there is a unity. There is a sense of intelligence to the way these animals hunt. So they were trying to rationalize this instead of just looking at it and saying, it is what it is. It is the nature of it. So when you understand that the reason why we cannot catch up to where the Egyptians were is because we have been taught by the very people who were trying to rationalize spirituality and put it into terms that they can understand. We have learned from them. We are trying to learn spirituality from a non-spiritual position. Plain and simple. This is why meditation is a big part, because then you get spiritual and this is how you begin to learn. Instead of you being this whole materialistic mind frame, this materialistic person that's trying to rationalize things and put it into terms instead of just letting it be. So it makes perfect sense that the ancient Egyptians wrote in hieroglyphs, that their pictographs were so their people can understand. You would have to be spiritual and in the know. You wouldn't be sitting there trying to figure it out. It would just be. You understand? It would just be a feeling. You would just feel it. The way we feel negativity, the way we feel love and joy and happiness, you would just feel it. You will look at something and know it instead of you trying to ABC 1, 2, 3. And this is what the Greeks were doing. And this is why it was so hard for them to pick this up, because they can never grasp the true spirituality of what the ancients was doing. So, and them trying to rationalize everything, they came up with 4 concepts. They got the last 2 after the first 2. So the first 2 concepts that they came across was transcendence and immanence, which would give them pantheism and panentheism. So let's look at immanence. It says, the doctrine or theory of immanence holds that the divine encompasses or is manifested in the material world. So understand, these are Greeks trying to rationalize spirituality, or God, so to speak. It is held by some philosophical and metaphysical theories of divine presence. Immanence is usually applied in monotheistic, pantheistic, pandeistic, or panentheistic faiths to suggest that the spiritual world permeates the mundane. It is often contrasted with theories of transcendence, in which the divine is seen to be outside the material world. And understand, look what it's saying here. Major faiths commonly devote significant philosophical efforts to explaining the relationship between immanence and transcendence, but do so in different ways, such as, and you can see here casting immanence as a characteristic of transcendence, God, common in Abrahamic religion. So understand what it's telling you here, that before they came up with these religions, this is what they understood. Now let's go to transcendence. In religion, transcendence refers to the aspect of God's nature and power which is wholly independent of the material universe, beyond all physical laws. This is contrasted with immanence, where a God is said to be fully present in the physical world and thus accessible to creatures in various ways. In religious experience, transcendence is a state of being that has overcome the limitations of physical existence and by some definition has also become independent of it. This is typically manifested in prayer, seances, meditation, psychedelics, and paranormal visions. It is affirmed in various religious traditions concept of the divine, which contrasts with the notion of a God or the absolute that exists exclusively in the physical order, immanentism, or indistinguishable from it, pantheism. Transcendence can be attributed to the divine not only in its being, but also in its knowledge. Thus, God may transcend both the universe and knowledge is beyond the grasp of the human mind. Although transcendence is defined as the opposite of immanence, the two are not necessarily mutually exclusive. Some theologians and metaphysicians of various religious traditions affirm that a God is both within and beyond the universe, panentheism, in it but not of it, simultaneously pervading it and surpassing it. Pantheism. The term pantheism is a modern one, possibly first appearing in the writing of the Irish freethinker John Toland, and constructed from the Greek roots pan, all, and theos, God. But if not the name, the ideas themselves are very ancient, and any survey of the history of philosophy will uncover numerous pantheists or pantheistically inclined thinkers. Although it should also be noted that in many cases, all that history has preserved for us are secondhand reportings of attributed doctrines, any reconstruction of which is too conjectural to provide much by way of philosophical illumination. At its most general, pantheism may be understood positively as the view that God is identical with the cosmos, the view that there exists nothing which is outside of God, or else negatively as the rejection of any view that concerns God as distinct from the universe. However, given the complex and contested nature of the concept involved, there is insufficient consensus among philosophers to permit the construction of any more detailed definition not open to serious objection from some quarter or other. Moreover, the label is a controversial one, where strong desires either to appropriate or to reject it often serve only to obscure the actual issues, and it would be a sad irony if pantheism revealed itself to be most like a traditional religion in its sectarian disputes over just what counts as true pantheism. Therefore, pantheism should not be thought of as a single codifiable position. Rather, it should be understood as a diverse family of distinct doctrines, many of whom would be surprised and indeed disconcerted to find themselves regarded as members of a single household. Further, since the concept has porous and disputed boundaries, there is no clear consensus on just who qualifies, no distinctive roll call of past pantheists, given this situation. That range of things that may be usefully said about all pantheists is perhaps limited, but nonetheless, a variety of concepts may be clarified, the nature of contentious issues explored, and the range of possible options more precisely mapped out. Okay, panentheism, meaning all in God, from the Greek pan, all. Theos, God, is the belief that the divine pervades and interpenetrates every part of the universe and also extends beyond space and time. The term was coined by German philosopher Karl Kraus in 1828 to distinguish the ideas of George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel and Friedrich Wilhelm Joseph Schelling about the relation of God and the universe from the supposed pantheism of Baruch Spinoza. Unlike pantheism, which holds that the divine and the universe are identical, panentheism maintains an ontological distinction between the divine and the non divine and the significance of both. In panentheism, the universal spirit present everywhere, which at the same time transcends all things created, while pantheism asserts that all is God. Panentheism claims that God is greater than the universe. Some versions of panentheism suggest that the universe is nothing more than the manifestation of God. In addition, some forms indicate that the universe is contained within God, like in the Kabbalah concept of Simsim. Simsim, it has a T, but you pronounce it like tsunami. Simsim. Also, much Hindu thought is highly characterized by panentheism and pantheism. The basic tradition, however, on which Krauss's concept was built, seems to have been Neoplatonic philosophy and its successors in Western philosophy and Orthodox theology. Now, if you can grasp all this, what it's trying to tell you is basically how they took spirituality itself and tried to understand it and try to break it down in ways to where it can be understood in a scholarly way rather than a spirituality way, spiritual. So I talked about this before. When you have to understand that you're talking about a civilization of people that live spiritual lives. You can go into many civilizations and you see Africans still living primitively, and their language are more tones. It's tonal. It's like musical almost, so you can understand, spiritual, which we're going to really make that connection between music and spirituality in this video like you've never seen before. So they were trying to grasp this concept of not feeling but thinking, not being but doing, and it's just you walk the way you're supposed to walk. You don't try to figure out how you should walk, you just walk. And they were trying to figure out what they shouldn't been trying to figure out but feel. So this is what all this is. All this panentheism and pantheism and transcendence and immanence and all this stuff is about them trying to basically take spirituality and rationalize it and put it into words so everybody can study it and understand it and grasp the concept of a creator, which had they just, paid attention to the Egyptians and what the Egyptians was teaching and understanding about, energy and consciousness and so on and so forth, they would have grasped it, grasped the whole concept, but they could not. So because of this, and because when we go to study all of this, you must understand, one, what do we see when we're looking up these words? It goes back to what? Greek. Always going back to Greek or Latin, the people who gave us this stuff. And the reason why it's hard for us to start to grasp these concepts because we are stuck in scholarly ways and we are proud of it. Everything is about you're a scholar this, you're a scholar that. We have lost the ability to feel and understand and thus becoming exactly what the Europeans are. As Africans, as Black people, it is in us to feel. We must feel, we must understand and understand that this energy is there and it exists. It's not something we have to study, that you have to read. It's there. We have to know it's there. We have to feel it out. And when I talk about meditation and talk about understanding spirituality, this is what I mean. Everybody want to run the books. Everybody want to run the words. Everybody want to run to what was said instead of studying the art of the energy itself and the consciousness itself, which is inside of each and every one of us. And it's only there you're going to find the answer. And it's tough because some people are not going to grasp this because they're stuck. They're stuck in their scholarly ways. They're stuck in a way to where most people are trying to take this. And it's almost as if this is like, something they wanted to do. They wanted to make this so it can be felt, and you can't put it on paper to teach it. A person must feel it. And it was like they kind of locked it off there. And they knew it will only be one people one set of people who will ever be able to unlock it. And that is the true spiritual people of this planet that can ever grasp the concepts and what's there and actually take it in spiritually and feel it rather than look at it on paper and try to understand it. And that is us. As I said, they left everything for us. It's all still there. The writings are there. Everything is still here for us to grasp. Yet they have taken over the concept of spirituality and have given us scholarly. I also want you to notice how these terms are all dualistic. Transcendence and immanence, pantheism, and you start to read the definitions as I've read, and you see that they are, dualistic. It's a yin and yang to all of it. It's in and out. All of it there to balance and unbalance, to keep the role of duality, which is in all of us. We are all dualistic beings. And it's like it has to be this way. But in there, don't get me wrong, in there, trying to understand on a scholarly way, they were right in many ways the way they put it, and we have to, in some shape or form, be thankful for the scholarly part of it because, it kind of sort of gave us the knowledge to understand what's being said. But, we just took on the knowledge because most people are just trying to prove to other people. They ain't really trying to grasp the spirituality for themselves. They're just trying to be able to teach it and say, I know this and you don't. And the only way to do that is to be able to write it down and show people in words. You get what I'm saying? It's like if you felt God and you know spirituality, so on and so forth, how can you teach that? And it goes into the Bible when people say, the Bible's talking about people who saw God, people who felt God. How can you teach that? You can't teach that. I can't go to you and say, I felt the presence of God, which is feeling the presence of yourself, feeling your own energy. How do I say that to you? How did I say that to you to where you can understand that what I'm saying is true? I can't write that on a piece of paper and get you to accept that. It's like, okay, well, you're going to look at me like I'm crazy. It's something that has to be felt within. And then only those who felt it as well can gel with you. They can relate. Y'all are both in tune now because they know what you're talking about. You guys are connected. And then in that process, the whole civilization of the ancient Egyptians was connected. They were one because they all understood, and it was easy for them. This is why the Egyptians didn't accept any outside languages or any outside information. Everything was within that civilization that they understood because they didn't want anything coming in there and corrupting their unity. So now understand, when we look at these terms again, transcendence, immanence, panentheism, these terms are, by a different name already understood and talked about by the ancient Greeks. So they already had an understanding of these things. And this is where a lot of these philosophers later on will get it from, of course, from all of the Greek mythology and all the Greek understanding of these words. Remember, the Greeks were trying to rationalize this stuff. And they got how the Egyptians must have some type of power. They got how what the Egyptians was doing was correct because you can see it. You can see that no matter how crazy or how much you thought the stuff was weird, it's working for them. So by them not being able to grasp it spiritually because of the lack of melanin and the lack of them being born into a civilization where it's all about spirituality, them trying to rationalize it in a way for them to understand this is what they came up with. But when you look at it, what is it really? What are we talking about here? Talking about consciousness and energy and how consciousness transcends the physical universe and inhabits the unseen spiritual universe. And we know that the ancient Egyptians, they believed that, there was gods in everything, goddesses in everything, netters, netterus in everything. So now, why did the ancient Egyptians believe that there was this, divine essence in all beings? Because they understood vibration. They understood that we were all energetic, vibrational beings, plain and simple. Everything vibrates. Everything is made of atoms, and they all vibrate. This was the concept that they grasped early. So the universe is like, cosmic radio playing a song, and you have to, be able to hear that song and get in tune with it, vibrate with it, so you can get in tune with this cosmic song. And in doing so, you are on beat. You are on beat. The melody is right. You can move. It's a cadence. You're going to learn in this video that everything we do is based upon this. And it's going to make so much sense. And it's so amazing when you get into it. I mean, a lot of the concepts that we use, we don't even understand. It deals with the universe and it deals with being in cosmic step, being in vibration, being in tune. And we say that so much, but people really don't understand. So they knew, we are all vibrational beings. When we get down to it, we're talking about we are all vibrational and that the universe is playing this cosmic music that we all have to get in tune with. And being in tune with it, we're able to do things because we are in tune with this melody. And I know a lot of you guys, you didn't really get the concept of the zodiac. And this is a major part of it. So, when I was talking about how the Hebrews were able to do what they did because they followed the zodiac, the Ark of the Covenant, as I mentioned, is giving you that understanding. This is the zodiac. If you follow it, if you stay in tune with it, you're going to be able to do what you need to do during this time. Times will change. You must change with the times. You must stay in cosmic step in order to be in tune with the universal orchestra. And this is what they understood. So it's going to make a lot of sense. So they grasped this concept. And in grasping this concept, they acted accordingly. So now understand, the ancient Egyptians knew that the stars and the planets had a direct effect on this planet. Now it says here, astrology, which holds that there is a direct correlation between astronomical phenomena and experiences in the human world, played an integral role in the belief system of the ancient Egyptians. Although the advent of astrology has largely been associated with the Babylonians, some historians have argued that they learned their astrological knowledge from the priests of Egypt. Despite this debate, it is clear that the ancient Egyptian civilization made its own contributions to astrology. Astrology is often confused with astronomy, and there is in fact an imminent relationship between the two. Astro is the Greek root word for star, and while astronomy is the study and naming of the objects in the sky per se, astrology represents mankind's attempt to impart meaning into the relative position of those objects. Here we go again. As I said, they're trying to understand in lay terms and so they can understand it. So it says here, Egyptian astronomy facts. Early Egyptian astronomers acutely monitored and recorded the movement of the stars such that they would understand their effects on the Earth's environmental changes and the seasons. These astronomers were mainly temple priests, as it was believed that understanding the cosmos was a divine skill. Temples were constructed to imitate the design of the heavens, the floor being the earth, and the arched ceilings imitating the skies. In addition, temple rituals were time-based on planetary activity. It says here, astronomy versus astrology. The ancient Egyptians developed a system of astronomy as they believed that solar movements could predict natural environmental events such as famine and floods. This system of predicting and drawing connections between human experiences and the cosmos is what has become known as Egyptian astrology. Harmony of the spheres. Everything is in a state of vibration, light, sound, and physical matter. We are complexes of vibration surrounded by other transmitters and receptors of vibration. Together, all of it forms an ever-evolving orchestra. So as I said, everything is vibration. Sound is vibration. So they understood that our bodies are transmitters and receivers. So put yourself back then as a constant observer. 24 hours, you would observe not only the movement of the sun, the moon, the stars, but you would notice one big thing during this time. The most important thing you would notice is when the sun is moving, you are losing energy. As the sun goes down and the moon rises, you are losing energy. You are losing your ability to stay awake and to keep record of what's going on. This has to do with our circadian rhythm. So our circadian rhythm is a 24-hour cycle that basically rules our biochemical and physiological process. So it exists in all living things, basically. Our cells are basically set to our circadian rhythm. When we sleep, we heal, we re-energize. So you have this whole thing going on where the sun is going up and down and movement of the moon and the stars and so on and so forth. Yet we are losing energy. And if you were somehow able to observe a sleeping person during this process where the sun is going down and they're going to sleep and they fall asleep. And when you hit that point, you're done. You're tired. Circadian rhythm is in motion. But then eventually as the sun comes up, you will wake up and be fully regenerated. I need you guys, we just take it for granted. I need you guys to really grasp that concept. Think, if you are new, this is the beginning. There's no TVs, no YouTubers, none of this shit. You are looking at, existence itself and how it relates to us. So the sun is going down, you going to sleep, you're losing energy. The sun is coming up. Wow, you feel like a new man. Think back then. What would you think the sun is? The sun is God. The sun is taking our energy and it's giving it back to us. But then, you're smart enough to understand that there's a different process to this. What is that about? So they understood that, this is this biological clock. It's this energy. It's this something that exists. You can't see a tether from your body to the sun. So you understand that you're absorbing this energy. You're taking it in, you're receiving, you're transmitting, because we can all feel each other's energy. And they're trying to process all this stuff that's going on. And I'm talking in terms of the Greeks here, whereas you had the spiritual civilizations that didn't ask any questions. They accepted it, they knew what it was. Whereas looking at it as an observer on the Greek side, you're like, damn. On the white man's side, you're like, okay, how do I explain this? And you're writing it down. Whereas lion, tiger, bear, animal, rabbit, turtle, they're not, where's the pen and paper? They're not trying to figure this shit out. There's no reason for them to try to figure it out. They get it. They already know it's in them. Whereas we who fell in consciousness, we who have lost what we once known, we're trying to pick it up. Whereas the Egyptians just somehow they had to know. And they marched up to Kemet and they knew and they built and they kept going in hopes of remembering what they once were, and they were getting closer to it. Where when you had the the Greeks looking at these people like, they are relentless. They get it. What's going on? How come we cannot? Okay, they won't let us in the mystery school. 40 years. Well, how can I take what they have and try to rationalize it and put it into an understanding where I can get people to understand and make sense of what they're doing? So as I said, you will look at the sun as God, and you realize that, sun goes down, you lose energy. And the Bible talks about, and all these preachers talk about how God will wake you up in the morning. I talked about the suprachiasmatic nucleus and how when the sun, first light hits your eyelids, that begins the awakening process where, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is basically regulating your hormone, which is going to reduce the amount of melatonin from your bloodstream, thus allowing you to awake. And it's the reverse at nighttime, where it's putting melatonin into your bloodstream, which is causing you to go to sleep. This is the sleep and awakening process caused by the sun itself. So they will understand that as well. So the ancient Egyptians understood the electromagnetic field of our hearts and our brain, and how it was in sync with the electromagnetic field of the earth, and how you can also see that animals also are in tune with that electromagnetic field and how animals use it to migrate and navigate. We can also look at the sun. We know that certain animals give birth based on certain lunar cycles. They migrate based on certain lunar cycles. They use the moon to navigate. They use the Earth's electromagnetic field to navigate. And we can look at the sun, the moon, and Earth itself and see how they have effects on people on this planet, on animals, and on humans. So what about the rest of the planets? So there's this certain harmony to Earth, this cycle that exists, and we see how everything plays off each other. How the rain helps the crops grow, and the animals eat the crops, and we eat the animals and bugs, and so on and so forth. All live off this natural balance that the Earth has, and it works. There's this certain synchronicity to the planet. So they looked at this and said, is it the same with the other planets? If there's a certain synchronicity with us, the sun, the moon, and other stars or what have you, what about the rest of these planets? What about them? Do they have a cosmic synchronicity that they need to know about? And of course, they do. So now it says here, the cosmos as orderly system. Before dealing with the subject of how to apply this knowledge, it is important that one understand two things. One, the cosmos as an orderly system rather than a chaos. Two, the significance of celestial influence on our biophysiological system. Let's start with the first point. Our little solar system is neatly arranged as tones in a chord. The distance of the planets to the sun follow a neat mathematical order which is described by Bode's law. Assign a number to each planet in order starting with Mercury, counting the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, which most probably used to be a planet too. Then pick a planet and add 4 to its number, then divide by 10. This gives you the planet's distance in astronomical units from the sun. Pythagoras was the first to coin the term harmony of the spheres. It reflects the idea that the whole cosmic plan has an intimate connection between the laws of mathematics and of music in time and space. Aristotle characterized the Pythagorean philosophy as having reduced all things to numbers or elements of numbers, and described the whole universe as a harmonia and a number. This idea was later studied by Kepler and still in present times. This science and the relationship with the golden ratio are being yet further investigated. This brings us to the second point that needs to be understood: the celestial influence on our biophysiological system. The central nervous system and the regulation of endocrine glands as transformers of the life energy are intimately connected to the circadian rhythm. A number of researchers, for example, Rodney Collin, go further and relate various functions in the body of man to specific planetary influences. Without going into detail, it is safe to establish that man, as a microcosm, is connected to the macrocosm in which she lives. The day and night, the cycles of the moon, but also possibly finer vibratory forces transmitted by the planets. So this is going to be a shock to a lot of people, but a lot of you guys know this already. But the ancients already knew that the planets emitted a frequency and a sound. Each planet emitted a frequency and a sound from major to minor tones, just like in music. So these frequencies, this sound together is called the harmony of the universe. Take a look.